HBs. We are back for Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two friends giggle, snort, recap, and review their way through a new romance novel each week. This week, we were delighted to read Courtney Milan's newest release, After the Wedding. So let's jump right in. Hi, Erin.
Hey, Mo!
It is so good to talk to you.
Like, I haven't talked to you in, ages?
No, I know, but there's something about seeing your shining face and really, being able to connect that does good things for my psyche and my soul.
It does. Sometimes I'm like, oh, God, I gotta, crawl into that podcast room and, make up some sunshine stuff to talk about. But then every time I actually call you and then I see you, I'm like, oh, this isn't hard.
This is fun.
This is easy.
That's actually how I feel about editing a lot of times. The idea of editing pisses me off forever.
Yeah.
And then when I start, I'm like, oh my God, this is just getting to relive our
conversation.
Relive the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I highly recommend HBs out there just recording all your conversations with all your friends so that you can play them back.
Yes.
It's more fun than you think it's going to be.
Yeah, seriously, as long as you get over hating the sound of your own voice. We, as speech folk, had to get over that real quick. But a lot of people, when they hear themselves played back, they're like,
no, I love it. I think I sound awesome every time. Every time I listen to a podcast, I'm like, nailed it. You did the best. You listen to other podcasters being like, oh, I couldn't listen to the podcast because I just feel like I sound like a doofus. Like My Favorite Murder, they say that all the time. Every time I listen, I'm like, great job, aces, Erin.
That's right. Exactly.
You did it again.
Oh my gosh. So this weekend, finally, a bunch of the culmination of my work that I've been doing silently to the world has come to fruition.
Silently to me? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you too, I guess. Or maybe I have chatted with you about it. It's not hard work. It's mostly fun work, but it's still I have to get the shit out, put things together, cut in straight lines, do stuff like that. So
this literally sounded like preschool, like what you just said was.
Oi!
I've got to do shapes. I've got to put the shapes in the right holes. I've got to cut around the lines.
You're a dick nose. Okay, so as people may know, my husband owns a comic book shop, and this weekend was the Bayonne hometown fair, and so. Lately, I've been doing... So we, set up a booth, and he goes and mans the booth all weekend, and it's fun. Sort of. Not for everyone but him.
Yeah. I'm sure it's fun once it kicks off. Those things are always a lot of prep work, but then when it's going, it's fun.
Yeah. So for this thing, and for the shop in general, I've been making magnets and flasks.
Oh, yeah. You accidentally texted me some of those flasks.
Yes. Yeah.
I got a picture of them, and you were like, this orientation? And I was like, yeah, looks good to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that happened because I had to redo a whole flask, not realizing that Spider-Man should have been upside down. Instead of being right side up. It looked to me like he was crouching, but really he was doing that thing where he has his legs folded up and he's hanging from his whatever. I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention.
It's a web.
Yeah. That's the one. So anyway, I made more than 30 flasks. And so they're all waterproof and ready for the boozes. And a bunch of other stuff, and they are at the fair currently, so that's really exciting.
So if you're in Bayonne, New Jersey, 3 weeks ago, go to the right.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, we've been taking requests too.
Yeah.
I've been taking requests, so yeah, people are like, I need a Superman flask or whatever, and I'll find the images and make it, and it's super fun. Anyway, that's what's been happening with me lately. My preschool crafts were finally shown to the world.
No. When you explained it, it sounded just the way you were like, there have been colors, there has been glue, there has been sticking things to other things, there have been scissors. I was like, this doesn't sound as serious as your tone.
No, and it really isn't. I mean,
they look nice in the picture that you sent me. I'm sure they took a lot of work. It's hard to get things when you're like decoupaging. It's hard to get things like flush to lines, you know?
Oh.
Unless you have like serious paper cutting technology.
Especially when they're curved and they're all the shit.
Sorry, it just sounds the same. I tried to make it sound more serious. And then we were like, especially when there's a curve you have to cut around. Oh, man.
You know what? Montessori school really, really helped in my future life.
Montessori school? You bougie. I had no idea.
I went to Montessori school in Hawaii.
God.
That is where that's where I got my first haircut by another 3-year-old. Uh-huh. That is where, the poor.
You can cut your own hair? Lame.
Mm-hmm. No, Lame. I had a friend. Wait. So 2 stories. One, I'm at Montessori school. There's this jerk face little kid, and the teacher, of course, like, she turned her back for 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden, a whole clump of my hair was gone because we were cutting things as you do.
Yes.
And
was it in a curve or a straight line?
Stop it. So she presented. My mom comes to pick me up, and she presented my hair in like this to-go jewelry box situation, being like, I'm so sorry that this happened, but here is the lock of your hair. It was so weird.
That is the most hippie school shit I think I've ever heard. Here's the lock of your child's hair.
It had like the cotton. You know when you get a necklace and it's like laying on a cotton in a thing? Like, I think she found something in her purse to like make it seem a little bit better, and she gave it to my mom like a keepsake.
Wow. When I think of my childhood and necklace box like that, I think of my cousin Zach, who put his dead newt in a necklace box like that and then wrote Tommy is died on it. Newt was named Tommy. And he carried it around forever. And then he put it in the freezer. You must have seen somewhere where they won't rot, because it started getting real smelly in there.
Yeah.
They didn't find that newt in the freezer for we were teenagers when they found that. Anyway, your second story.
That's amazing.
I think about that every time I see a necklace box. Every single time I'm like, that newt.
There's a newt in there.
Yeah.
Second one was my friend Pua, day before, I think either kindergarten or first grade. I was at her house, and she was adamant that we needed haircuts. Oh, no, it was day before kindergarten or first grade school pictures. That's what it was.
Ooh.
Adamant that we needed haircuts. And I was like, this seems like an ill-advised idea. Mm-hmm. And she was like, no, we have to have haircuts. We have to make sure that everything looks perfect and blah, 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 blah. And I kept on fighting her on it because she's like coming at me with the scissors. And then finally she was like, I am so good at this. Watch. And she grabbed the front of her hair and literally cut it off at her scalp.
No, Pua.
Pua.
No.
Pua had a really fucked up picture the next day because there was no covering that.
Oh, but now
I looked perfect.
I bet. But now, I would love to have a picture of me like that.
I know.
To be like, look at what an idiot I was.
Yeah. Wait, so speaking of friends and amazing friends, we have some Patreon shout-outs to do.
We do.
Yeah. So we're going to do a few Patreon shout-outs. They'll be forthcoming in the weeks to come as well. But the first one is to Liz S. Liz, you are a benevolent fury who uses her considerable power and prowess for only the best intentions and outcomes.
No. I don't know if that's accurate.
What?
Liz is a childhood friend of mine. I don't know if she does use her power for good all the time. I don't know. Liz, you'll have to weigh in on this.
I mean, maybe this is an outsider's perspective, but yeah.
Liz is the originator of the duff that we talked about in the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
The knuckles up cunt punch.
Yeah, that's something I didn't know about. That is something I found out after I wrote her.
But can I also say,
we're all stupid in high school.
That's
she
true.
has since come into her own furiness.
She is a much more benevolent soul than she was in high school. As am I. We were both
Yes.
evil people
Yes.
in high school.
I did say she was a fury, right?
She is a
because
fury.
she has the power to go either way. But she has since decided to only be the most incredible.
Liz and I were obsessed when we were little with the cartoon The Last Unicorn.
Oh.
And by little, I mean like up through high school. Obsessed. Watched it over and over. Thought it was the funniest thing we'd ever seen. So in addition to being a fury, I want to say that Liz is also a harpy in the best sense of the word, which is a huge winged bird who attacks the last unicorn, growling, "We are sisters, you and I." She will like that. Or a very booby tree that takes Schmedrick, last of the Red Hot Swamis, into her breast. Yeah, it's a fucked up movie. It's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
There's
I've never
this
even
tree
heard of
with
it.
like huge knockers, and she takes this like wizard between her knockers, and she's like rubbing them all around, and she's like, "Love me, become a tree lover with me." It's very weird. It's for children.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next
So that's
up.
Liz.
Yes.
Shout out.
Liz.
Thanks for the Patreon
Shout out to Liz.
love.
Thank you for being our patron. Our matron, maybe. I don't know.
She is getting married next year.
Ooh. No, I mean, like, you know, this is
but
a
like,
Lady
you know,
Love
a matron.
podcast.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Jacqueline W. Jacqueline, you are a phenomenal siren who has used her voice to bring so many unsuspecting sailors to Heathen Bosoms Island. The beauty of your voice is matched only by the beauty of your mind and spirit.
Jacqueline!
Yeah, Jacqueline, you're so good.
That's Jacqueline W?
Yeah, Jacqueline W.
Yes.
She's fangirl musing on Twitter. Fangirl _musing on Twitter. Who you should be following for her live tweets of reading romance novels. And she also has a YouTube channel where she reviews romance novels. And she is the fucking best.
This woman is magic. She is outstanding.
Yes.
Yes.
There's just no other way to put it.
I'm so happy we found her and she found us. She makes me very, very happy.
Same. I can't even remember how she found us, but I
don't know.
Was the best day.
She is a candidate for first listener. She may well be the one. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 10 or 20 of you that could be the one, but Jacqueline's in there for sure.
Yeah, she could be the Spartacus of the Spartacai.
It's possible.
Who knows? Okay, and
right,
finally, for today, Kelly P. Kelly, you are a loving Pegasus who holds so much on her shoulders with such grace and surety. Plus, you're fucking fun.
That's a good one. I like Kelly P too. So all these, what's great is like a lot of the women, it's all women so far, right? That are on our Patreon that have donated and become our matrons or our patrons. I've all been people that are like active on the geriatric friendship cult. Mm-hmm. And so when I see them pop up, I'm like, oh, hey, Kelly. Like, I know who you are. It's deeply weird because I don't know these women. Like, I'm not real life friends with them, but I feel like I am.
Yeah. So Kelly, I'm pretty sure, I'll have to cut this out if it's not, but I'm pretty sure that when I was, because I try to do a little bit of a Facebook stalk if I can to try to really match my compliment
really get
to the
your
person.
Shout out, right?
Yeah.
It's the most Melody thing I've ever heard.
Anyway, Kelly's the one who posted on the cult the picture of the Smurf after she was like, I was in court today. Yeah.
She was at the judge's chambers and saw the Smurf.
Yes. So I had this whole thing around Kelly being like a priestess of Thike, I think it's pronounced, the Greek goddess of justice and purity or something like that. But I was so nervous about the way to pronounce the god's name because it's spelled Dike. I was like, I don't think I can do it.
Yeah. You never want to call somebody like a mythical dyke on the
podcast. I don't.
Although I'm sure there's somebody listening to the podcast that's like,
I am a dyke of mythical proportions.
Yeah, there's somebody out there being like, call me a mythical dyke. That's
right.
You don't want to just play roulette on that one, you know?
No, and also I want it to be I also want it to be accurate. Like I would call them like something, I would figure out something on the island of Lesbos, right?
Yeah,
but because that's accurate.
Also, we have no clue of what Kelly's sexuality is. It really sounds like
that also doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to be like, now we're in like a weird territory.
Also, happy Pride Month, everybody.
Yeah, happy Pride. This is our official Pride podcast now, I guess.
Yeah, we're officially in June, so it is Pride Month, and we are proud.
We're very proud.
Yeah. This bisexual is proud. So, there's that. And you're an ally, so.
I'm an ally.
You're a proud ally.
So I was out for drinks with some lesbian friends, and we were watching a soccer game. I was watching a hockey game, but they were watching a soccer game.
Okay.
And there was a soccer player.
Sounds like they have better taste.
Oh. There was a lady soccer player.
Yeah.
On Team USA. She was number 15. And she ran out, and I thought, maybe.
All right.
Like, if she asked me out, I would go. And I was like, hey guys, who's number 15? And they were very like, out of your league. You have no idea. She is our queen. Like, you're never going to get number 15. It was like, all right, okay.
Aw. Yeah, she's not into breaking anybody in.
But then one of the girls threw out the statistic. We were talking about politics and stuff. And she said that she had read somewhere where 20% of millennials now identify somewhere on the spectrum of gay. And I was like, am I on the spectrum now because of number 15? Like, just because that has changed something in me? And they were like, no. No, that's a lie. They were like, yes, and they all high-fived me. But I think the answer is no.
They're so supportive.
Yes.
They were
my
like,
awakening.
Pat, you hetero.
Exactly.
That's really cute.
Yeah. We talked about your love of that one girl on the L Word, too.
Oh.
I was like, I don't know anything about this show, but I know that you really like this one girl. And then I couldn't figure out who it was. We had to Google it.
Kate Monig. No worries. Yeah. I got you.
Shane, also, I found out is her name on the show. So I was like,
yeah,
she wears like leather jackets and she has like a like a brown hair chunky cut. And they were like, Shane. I was like, I don't know. I don't know her name on the show.
Yeah.
Right.
And then she actually in real life dated our other crush, mostly my other crush from Westworld. I'm blanking on her name right now. We just talked about her because Evan Rachel Wood.
Evan Rachel Wood. Yeah, you know what? I go. They dated as well.
In real life.
If she wanted to date me, I probably would go.
I mean, that jawline. I don't know how you say no.
It's not. It's just that she seems like she seems risky to me in a way.
But
she seems very
way.
Like. Yeah, she feels like dangerous, but also she'd take care of me.
Yeah. She would hold your hand and walk you through anything.
Oh, man. So this has been Gay Pride Corner with Erin and Melody.
Beep boop bop.
Beep boop bop.
Okay.
New segment.
All right, guys. We get to talk about, this is something that I was like, I'm sorry, 5-star reviewers. You're going to take a back seat for one book because I want to do After the Wedding by Courtney Milan. So there.
But I was a little bit no Melody, but I know that someday I will want to insert one book that I want to read in here. And I was kind of like, we've got too many reviews stacking up. We can't just insert things in here, especially because we've been trying to, when we insert books, we've been trying to insert books with some sort of diversity of some level. And I was like, if we're going to insert a book, it shouldn't be some like heteronormative white Regency
England
romance.
Times. Yeah. And then Melody came through with the win because this, you guys,
it turns out to be a biracial, bisexual, all over the place, double lesbian romance novel.
To what?
Because you've got Mrs. Martin, you've got Larissa, you've got the heroine experimenting with ladies. We've got a black hero. We're all over the place with this one. It's great. I was so happy when I started reading this. Yeah, we've got
and there's not a fucking ballroom in sight.
No one, like, they're kind of getting ruined. There's a little bit of getting ruined, but not a lot. Not a lot of ruining. There's a lot of like,
because
I'm
they're
so
already
ruined.
pretty much ruined.
This is what I like in a Regency romance. I want somebody who's already been like double, triple ruined before we even start the book. You know, I need a slut. That's what I want. Like in the good, in the good sense.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not trying to demean. I'm not trying to slut shame our heroine. I'm trying to say she's magic.
Yeah, you're trying to put all the slut power in there.
Yes.
Reclaiming the word slut. Okay. So I was so delighted. And actually, quick preview. Oh no, this is going to come out after our interview with Sarah McLean.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another one. Sarah McLean's book is another one where there's like 2 ballroom scenes, but you never see the actual ballroom really. Like there's none of the bullshit. It's all like an outsider's kind of perspective. And this is very much the same way.
I mean, I like a ballroom. I'm starting to wonder if I'm not... Do you remember Malcolm Gladwell's TED Talk about how people don't think they like the things that they actually like?
No, but I identify with that a lot.
So he
Why
talks
do you think
about
I
how
fought
people
so
say...
hard against The Bachelor for so long?
Right. Like, people say they want a strong black coffee, but what they really want is like a weak, weedy, milky coffee, you know? And I think maybe I do really like historical Regency romance novels, and I just don't want to... Because I like a ballroom. And I was...
Interesting.
Yeah. And I had a much better reaction to this than I did The Unleashing, which should be everything I was about.
Yeah, that's so true.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Know thyself, Erin. Do some digging.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is so fucking delightful. We have Erin come at me with their names.
Who?
The characters.
Oh, we can't start with the characters. We have to start before that. So this is After the Wedding by Courtney Milan. Page 1. I cried on page 1. Page 1 is a dedication. Did you read the dedication?
No.
This book is dedicated for Anita Hill. And I immediately...
I'm crying.
Lost my shit. It reads, for Anita Hill, who should never have to stand alone. For Emily Murphy, Dahlia Lithwick, Nancy Rappaport, Leah Littman, Christina Miller, Catherine Orr, Kathy Koo, and everyone who spoke anonymously, thank you. And for Matt Zapatoski for emailing me out of the blue, and for me for answering. Yeah, right? Now you're crying, right?
Yeah.
And I may have gotten some of those names wrong, because I only know one of them, but...
Oh my god.
Right? For Anita Hill!
Oh. Well, and Courtney Milan on a tweet I saw of hers forever ago, when the book was coming out originally, was like, this was a really tough one for me to write because the heroine in this she had it all. She sort of accidentally walked away from it, and then she spent 9 years trying to get somebody to think of her as worthwhile.
Right.
And it's, I don't know, and the hero, of course, is half black, and so he's not getting the recognition that he deserves from his family. He's always fighting against, innkeepers wanting to turn him away, kind of, and, all of the things that make it completely terrible to be a person of color in the world, especially in those times. It's not quite to the level of the way America was at that point, but it wasn't very far behind, or it wasn't very much better. Yeah, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful way that I feel like she dealt with her struggles and her pain. You know what I mean? The uncertainty that comes along. I assume
so, because there's a lot of subtext in here that's, I don't know, pretty clear to me. There's a lot of court stuff in there.
Absolutely.
But okay, so now we can talk about the hero. So we've got Camilla Winters, whose real name is not Winters, and then we've got Adrian Hunter.
Yes.
And they're at their wedding. They're getting married.
Oh boy. At gunpoint, everybody.
What a wonderful, joyous occasion. So it begins with this wedding. I think the first time through, it's in Camilla's voice, right?
Yeah.
And she's standing there and she's like, man, I'd really always wanted to get married. I'd really hoped someday somebody would love me, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. And it's in
a while ago, she does make note that she says at like a lot of years ago, I dared to hope I would be able to get married. And lately I've just been hoping that somebody would tell me you can stay with me forever.
Right.
Whether that is a platonic friend or a husband. Like, she didn't give a shit. She was just sick of the uncertainty of going from house to house roughly every year. Mm-hmm. And so then it comes to his part where he's supposed to say, I do. And he says, no, I do not consent to this. Uh-huh. And she's just like,
And this is where she says that she like looks at his hands and like his brown skin is like against his white
contrast
cuff. Yeah. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
This is gonna be an awesome one. And then so then they put a gun to his head and then he's like, okay, fine. I do. And then they walk out and she's like trying to carry her suitcase and she can't. And he's like walking ahead of her and he like leaves her behind. And what a shitty, shitty wedding. But then like doodly-doo, it's 3 days before.
Yeah.
Flashback. And Adrian, the groom, is speaking to his brother Grayson, who is Bae. Let's talk about Grayson for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You knew I'd fall in love with this guy, right? Whew.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. This is book Grayson. 2 of the Worth saga, which is Camilla's family. But man, I mean,
don't worry. Grayson will get a novella. If this is anything like the Brother Sinister series, he has to.
I just feel like I want to see him have sex with somebody. Okay, so Adrian and Grayson, they're speaking over breakfast. They're talking about their uncle. Adrian has gotten a telegram from their uncle, who is a bishop, saying that he needs something. He needs help. Grayson's like, listen, Adrian, don't go out there. Your uncle always breaks your heart. He's going to be a jackass.
This is like the 153rd time that he's going to promise you something in exchange for recognizing our branch of the family.
Right.
Like, it's not going to happen.
And Adrian's like, he loves me. He says he loves me. I'm going to go out there and help him. So Adrian goes to see his uncle, who is a bishop. And he's like, hoping that this time... So what's happened here is that the uncle's sister has ran off a long time ago with a black abolitionist American, right? He was American. And the Grayson and Adrian and many other brothers that died in the Civil War were the products of that union. And the
who
bishop...
are still together at like 35 years in.
I think they're still alive and they're off in America. But the bishop then like denounced his sister, refused to recognize his sister because she'd married this black man, and now will not recognize Adrian and Grayson as his nephews, even though Adrian like grew up at his house. They sent Adrian to England while the Civil War was going on to make sure they had like one son that wasn't going to die in this thing.
Yeah. And because they have businesses in England that become important.
Yeah, they make plates, china and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's running the businesses. He's doing all that in England. He's growing up in his uncle's house, and his uncle's telling everybody, oh, this is my secretary. Oh, this is my page, or I don't know, England time words, scrivener or whatever.
Amanuensis or whatever that was.
What?
Did you see? I don't know. I forget. If I don't look it up, like it's not going to happen.
I count on you for this shit.
Listen, I was like, and I think it was even presented in italics because it's like an ecclesiastical secretary or an ecclesiastical apprentice, if you will, like a kid who's thinking about maybe going into the church, and that's why he's allowed access to all the serious docs.
So everybody around the house was like, why are you always being so familiar with this like young black man who's your secretary? Like, and he just wants to be like, God damn it, I'm his nephew. Like, and he would always be like, I love you, but only like behind closed doors. He's just a jackass.
And it was so serious that I think, if I'm not mistaken, his dad actually just said that his sister died.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, yeah, she was fully dead and in the ground as far as the world was concerned.
Right.
Insane-y pants.
Right. So, yeah, the uncle has been like, she's dead. So he keeps promising Adrian that when the time is right, he's going to go back on that statement and say, okay, these guys are my nephews. But he keeps saying the time isn't right, the time isn't right. So he arrives and he's like, what do you need help with? And he's like, I need you to spy on this other bishop because there's bishop competition. There's church politics. And I need you to find out some dirt on him so I can take him down. And then after that, I will recognize you because I will be in a better churchly position to do so. I'll be powerful enough to handle the blow to my reputation that is a black nephew.
Right.
So Adrian...
Very reluctantly.
Yeah. Specifically what he asked him to do is to pose as a valet for this other bishop and like go into his home and like pretend to be a servant and spy on him. And Adrian's very like, this isn't a great idea.
Adrian's like, pardon me, everybody. I'm a CEO. Like,
I
like
run
that's basically his role.
Businesses. Yeah.
He's a serious man of industry with a lot of holdings.
Well, and also, if this other bishop found out that this guy was posing as doesn't... Oh, God. Wouldn't that just...
It's so dumb.
Yeah, it's awful. But he's like, sure, because he's a dummy. And he's blinded by love for his uncle. I see your face. I see the face you're making.
I know. Not to mention that while Camilla's whole through line is like the only thing she has to hold on to is hope. Mm-hmm. He never says that specifically, but Adrian is also incredibly hopeful. Mm-hmm. And he's buoyed and guided by his hope and his optimism that his uncle will not be a complete and utter garbage human, which, darling.
Yep.
So he goes off and he's going to pose as this valet. Now, meanwhile, it rewinds to what, like 7 days
Is it
earlier?
not valet? Is it valet? Jesus, England times.
I think in England times it's valet.
Fuck God. I didn't mean fuck God. That's not what I meant to say.
It was fuck, comma, fuck, God, period.
God, period.
Oh, it wasn't.
Oh, man.
All right, no comma in there. Sorry, guys.
At least a semicolon.
Okay, so then I think it rewinds to like 7 days prior, and Camilla's in the house, right? Yeah. Or something like that. I don't know. I think
exactly it's around the same time, of Adrian having the conversation with Grayson. But so it flashes to Camilla the day that this other bishop arrived at her house. So she works for the Rector Miles, sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rector Miles. And this bishop, who now Adrian is posing as his valet, arrives at the rector's house. And she's in, like, a horrible state because no one told the servants that they were getting a bishop guest. And now they're, like, here. And she hasn't done the linens. And she hasn't done the stuff.
She hasn't made the beds. She hasn't polished the silverware. She hasn't done any of the
silverware is definitely one of them. Yeah.
That should have taken at least a day. She now has roughly 45 minutes to complete.
And she's got the situation where people have given her 3 priority 1 tasks.
Yeah.
And only time to do one of them. It's
literally Erin's nightmare.
Yeah.
You would implode.
As you know, worth is defined by productivity.
That's right.
And if you can't get your tasks done, oof. Okay, so she's doing the beds, and Adrian, the sexiest valet that has ever valeted, walks in, and she's like...
Well, and she's cursing. Yeah. She's like, I don't have time for this shite, and or something like that. And he's like, oh, blah, 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 blah.
He's like, who does? And then they talk, and she's... I forget the actual stuff, but she's like, oh, you didn't hear me say that, please, you didn't hear me say shite. But I think, like, she changes it to fuck or something worse. She said... If you hadn't interrupted me, Camilla continued, you would have heard me say, I don't have time for this trite bullshit, because she stopped him, or he stopped her right in the middle.
Yeah, because he stopped her, and then she was like, oh no, just now, you may have heard, and it says, he looks visibly amused. I'm absolutely positive that I heard you say, I don't have time for this trite, he trailed off, gesturing. Mm-hmm. And so he totally gave her an out to be like, trite, cockamamie, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and instead,
England
she
stuff.
was like, trite bullshit.
And he likes that. He's like, she's a little,
She's spirited.
Spirited, yeah. Mm-hmm. She's fiery. And she likes him because of shoulders.
Because he's hot.
Yeah, he's good.
Well, and he's very kind and generous, and nobody is kind to
and
her.
Wants to talk to
ever.
her. Clearly thinks she's
Yes.
witty and cool and wants to flirt with her. They are definitely flirting.
They're so flirting, but in a very cute, non-damaging way.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, by the end of this interaction, he's like, you know what? I know that I heard them tell you have to serve tea and polish silverware and do this all at once. So how about I make the beds?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'll go. And she's like, no, I couldn't possibly make you do that. And he's like, listen, I'm really enjoying our conversation. And so if you perish from overwork, I'm not going to be able to talk to you more. And she's like, hearts aflutter, bye.
I know.
And it's really cute.
Yeah. And she's like going around like shaming herself for having flirted with him. Clearly she's been reprimanded for flirting with men before. Something's going on in her life where she has been like seriously shamed for flirting. And so she's like, oh my God, you're an idiot. You flirted and blah, blah, blah.
Which... Meanwhile, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, that was a normal person's conversation.
Yeah, that was
darling.
normal. She starts out this book in a situation mentally that is not good.
Thing.
So
well, and he even a while later, I don't remember exactly when it is, but he's like, I don't know what the hell these people are talking about. Mm-hmm. It was barely flirting. Like we were just bantering.
Yeah.
And yet she feels so terrible for everything. Oh, that's when, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself.
So she actually has the thought right after this that no doubt what would be engraved on her tombstone is Camilla tried to be good, but not for very long. And I just love that tombstone.
What a lovely epitaph.
Okay, so then they all have servants' dinner and the servants, and he's sitting there trying to like get little bits of information about the rector and the bishop and who knows what and stuff. And everybody at dinner, it's so awful, is like, well, if you want to know anything, ask the gossip Camilla. And they call her half-price Camilla because she only gets half wages. I'm just like, what is so bad about this girl that they only pay her half wages? It's just so sad.
I mean, there is nothing wrong with her. There is everything wrong with Rector Miles and his version of England times.
Right. And so they go to bed and they have like a little flirt before bed.
Well, because at dinner she is barely making eye contact. She is trying desperately just to eat her gross stew and like
potatoes and cheese.
Yes, she's avoiding him. She's, not engaging because she doesn't want to be that lady anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then he catches her because she's heading up to bed and they like pass each other on the stairs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah. And they talk a little bit more, but not much. And then she goes to bed and that's
it's
it
a very
day,
like
right?
little minor flirt. And she's just like, oh, Camilla, you shouldn't have done that, but it was also worth it. But you shouldn't have talked to him. Anyway, so then the next day, she serves some tea to Rector Miles and Bishop. It's Bishop Lassiter? Is
Lassiter.
That correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So she goes and gets the tea. The bishop asks about her real name. He's like, hey, you're actually Camilla Worth, isn't that right? Sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he's all like, Camilla, what's your like real name sort of thing? And she's just like, oh, yeah, it's Winters. That's really my real name. And I don't talk to my family much. It's very clear that he knows something and she knows something, but she doesn't want to say the thing that is the real thing about her family. And it's a very awkward situation for her. And then Rector Miles changes the conversation and she's like, oh, thank God. He's like diverting the bishop away from this like really distasteful conversation, and he's like, hey Camilla, logbooks, and she's like, oh great, like this is where I'm great, I'm very helpful and like remember all the logbooks, so this is great. And Rector Miles is like, do you remember all the names from the logbooks? And she rattles off a bunch of names of people who have donated charitable donations.
Yeah.
And then
like
she's
who
like,
visited and who has grievances and blah.
And she's like, oh right, and also Mrs. Martin, I definitely remember her. And Rector Miles is like, okay, yep, all right, go away now.
Right.
So, let's see. And I didn't even remember that happened until I went back this morning and looked through everything. So then, this is the big scene.
Big thing.
Somebody has told Adrian that the bishop has spilled mustard on himself at lunch, and that he must get him a new shirt or get the mustard off of his shirt. So Adrian goes to where the bishop is at. Mm-hmm. The bishop's clothes is at, to get him a new shirt. He goes into the room. He shuts the door behind him. He goes to look through the shirts, and he realizes Camilla is in there. So he's like, she's doing linens or whatever it is she does.
Right.
So he goes to open the door because you can't be behind closed doors with a lady in England.
Yes.
And
not alone.
No. So, but he goes and opens the door and it's locked. And he's like, oh, the door's locked. And she's like, what? Like, Camilla
and
freaks
she immediately
the fuck
goes from
out.
0 to panic attack.
She is like, we have to get out of here. We can't be here. This is happening to me again. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I've got to get out of here.
Going out of windows at 3 stories up with no landing or rooftop.
She
or
literally
anything.
tries to climb out the window and jump out the window rather than be in a room alone with him. He finds the whole thing pretty funny because he's just like, come on, like, we'll just get somebody to unlock the door, you know.
Yeah, but his spidey senses are also tingling because, like, there shouldn't have been the type of stain there was on the shirt.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't have been this problem with the door, and there shouldn't be all these things.
He says to her, I came up here to do the mustard, get the mustard stain. And she's like, I was there at lunch. He didn't spill mustard on his shirt. So
it was actually red wine, that's why. He didn't have
something
another
like
shirt because he had spilled mustard yesterday and he couldn't get the mustard out because he's a terrible valet.
Right. So he's seeing that the
like,
story that they told him isn't lining
they don't
up.
drink red wine at lunch.
Ah, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So, then somebody comes in and it's Kitty and it's the rector. And
wait, it's Kitty, it's the footman, the rector, and the bishop. They're all standing at the door.
Oh, I didn't know the footman was there.
Oh, because the footman's the one who sent him upstairs. And
right.
so
I didn't realize he came into the room.
Yeah, because then Kitty... Oh, God. Go ahead.
So, then the rector's like, oh my God, Camilla, you're such a slut. Like, I knew this would happen. You have not changed your ways. You're in here fornicating with this man. And Adrian's just like, we haven't even been in here like 5 minutes, and she tried to go out the window. Like, we're not, like, all her dress stuff is on, and we know that takes at least 45 minutes to get on and off.
Oh, God.
And they were like, you've been up here at least an hour. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? We've been in here like 5 minutes. And he's like, when I walked in, she was all the way across the room, because they're like, she's locked you into the room. And he's like, we don't even have a key. We've been trying to get out. Like, it's just very weird. And then Kitty, the other maid, the one who's been calling her half-price Camilla and has been so awful to her. And in Camilla's inner monologue, she thinks Kitty is her friend, which is devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Goes up to Camilla, reaches into the pocket of her dress, and pulls out the key to the room. And is like,
this key?
Yeah.
And then the footman is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't send you up here for a red wine stain 5 minutes ago. You've been up here for an hour.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? What
is happening?
So then the rector's like, okay, are you going to make it right?
Are you going to marry this chick? And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I've done nothing wrong.
Right.
Ah, man. So then they have this delicious meeting with Adrian where they're like, Bishop and Rector are sitting there and they're like, all right, Adrian, the valet, marry this maid because you sexed her. And he's like...
And they're expecting him to just fall to his knees because of their station alone.
Right. Because they think that he's just this random black servant who answered a valet advertisement and is pretty shitty at being a valet. But he's not. He's like a very affluent man in the community.
Yeah.
So he's just like, yeah, you're both beneath me. You're both liars. We've been set up and I'm not marrying shit. And I will be gone with myself now. I will leave. Mm-hmm. And they lock him into a room.
They lock him in the basement.
Yeah. And then
at gunpoint, I think. It's crazy.
Then we get the marriage scene a second time, but from
Adrian's
perspective.
And then they head off to an inn. And from the beginning, we saw Camilla being like, I'm holding everything I own in this tiny suitcase that's actually kind of heavy. I'm trying desperately to keep up with him. And meanwhile, then we come to Adrian's perspective, and he's like just so angry that he can't think of anything else. And so when he finally realizes, like 1.5 miles down the road, that his 8-inch taller frame has been speed walking and this woman has been trying to keep up, he's like, I am the worst. So he turns around and he starts talking to her and he's like, I need you to know that we're not actually married.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's witnesses. We both said I do.
There was double bishops there, or a rector and a bishop. Like, this happened. Oh, the other thing is that they were like, one of the things Adrian said was, you need a special license. You can't just marry us right now.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we've already got the special license. So this is happening. And he's like, what is going on?
How did this happen?
Yeah.
So
she's like, there was a license. It was for real.
Right.
We're married.
And he's like, you can't be married if you don't consent. And neither of us consented. So
we're going to get an annulment.
Yeah. So he's like, you seem like a perfectly nice, wonderful girl. I just don't want to be married to you. And she's like, yes, that sounds completely reasonable out loud. And inside, she's like, why can't just one person think I'm worth it?
I want to be married to him. He's so handsome.
Yeah.
So nice to me.
Kind of, right.
I mean, she doesn't want to get married at gunpoint to a stranger. This wasn't. But she was just like, could he at least be like, it wouldn't be so bad to be married to you? Or like, we should try to get out of this. But if we don't, it's cool.
It's going to be fine.
You. Yeah. But he's just like, no, this will not happen. We must get annulled.
So they head to an inn, and he makes up this whole story about how she's a governess, and they met on the road. They get 2 separate rooms. They pay for their meals separately. But they each have to eat in the kitchen. Oh,
yeah.
What?
But first they have dinner in the kitchen. That's what I was
Yeah, they have to eat in the kitchen because the innkeeper doesn't want a black man to eat amongst the guests. Right. And she also is a little bit leery about this whole governess story. Yeah. So she's like, you might be a lady of ill repute. You should also eat in the kitchen.
Right, yeah.
And it's a whole thing.
So they have dinner, and the dinner sucks. Like, it's like really gross. And Adrian's all like, this dinner is gross. And Camilla's like, if you just
I'm so hungry.
So they cooked the potatoes in vinegar, and then also the soup had no flavor. And he's just like, this is disgusting. And Camilla's like, it's not so bad if you put the potatoes into the soup, then it gives the soup the vinegar flavor, you know? And he's just like, man, you're like one of those people who can really just make sunshine and rainbows out of everything. And she's like, yep, that's the worst quality about me.
It's the only way I've survived.
Yeah, exactly. So they go to bed, and she sobs her face off all night. And
she has these wicked thoughts. She thinks to herself that she thinks they're wicked. I'm not saying that.
Oh,
or she's like, what?
Sorry. Also at dinner, he told her about his whole family backstory.
Oh, yeah. He was like, I'm just going to give it to you straight, and I hope you believe me.
And she says she believes him. She's a little leery, but, like, believing is kind of her thing. So she's like, okay, I believe you. Because, I mean, all she knows is he's a valet or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm only pretending to be the valet. I'm the son of a duke. And she's like, the grandson of a duke. I don't remember.
Yeah, grandson of a duke, yeah.
And she's
nephew
like,
of an Earl.
All right, sure. Yep, we'll go with this. So he tells her that they can get the annulment from his uncle, the bishop. He just has to send him a telegram, and it'll be easy peasy, and it'll be done. Sorry. So then she sobs her face off all night.
Yeah, and she thinks to herself, like, he told me all the things I need to do to make this marriage permanent. All I have to do is seduce him and sleep with him, and then the marriage is real.
She doesn't even have to do that. She can just lie.
Oh, yeah, she could just say.
And say, he did sex on me. And then it's done.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because she's not a virgin, so they're not going to, inspect her and be like, she's all virgin-y in there, which isn't a thing anyway, but still she knows.
They can't tell.
Yeah, you can't tell. Hymen's like a scrunchie. It's not like a cellophane. So anyway, but she knows that even if the hymen was like a little cellophane in there that's punctured or whatever, she knows hers is already gone. So she's like, I could just say.
Yeah. And so she thinks that to herself, but then by the morning, she's like, no, I'm actually a goddamn good person, and I would never do that. Like, I don't want someone to be shackled to me. I want something better. I want somebody to choose me. Mm-hmm. So he goes off to send the telegram, and he tells her he'll be back before noon. This is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to send the telegram. It takes over an hour to get a response, and his uncle's like, you're in this on your own. I really need this info. Don't fuck it up.
He's like, they married me at gunpoint. He's like, serious, horrible things have happened. I need your help immediately. And he's like, no, I believe in you. You can do it. And he comes back and he's like, married at gunpoint. Serious problems. Need annulment immediately. And the uncle's like, well, I'll get you the annulment if you find out more dirt on the, you had a task, complete it. And it's so devastating. It's so awful. But the silver lining here.
All of these, yeah. So the silver lining, go ahead.
Is Mrs. Beasley.
Yes! Mrs. Beasley.
What a great side character.
Fabulous. Yes.
So she's the telegram person lady.
Operator.
And she's clearly, he can tell when he's sending the telegram, she is very interested in listening to it. And then she takes his telegram about getting married at gunpoint and puts it in a little envelope that she has. And he's like, aren't you supposed to destroy those?
Do you have to keep those? And she's like, no, I don't have to, but you can imagine this is very dull work.
She's like, sometimes we have to go over them again at the end of the day to make sure everything's good. And he's like, that's bullshit. Bullshit. She's just a gossip. And then she says to him, just, wondering, was the woman that you were married at gunpoint to Miss Camilla Winters? I don't know how she may have pieced this together from other telegrams and stuff.
We know how it happened. Yeah, it's because of the other telegrams. But and then the gossip.
In the moment, it seemed to me like she just knew Camilla Winters' shameless flirt and unfortunate woman.
No, that's probably, not, but yeah.
But in the moment, we don't know how she knows. And I'm just like, oh man, this girl is so unfortunate that this telegraph operator was like, I wonder who was married at gunpoint to this valet. Probably Camilla. Half price Camilla. And he's like, yes. And she's like, they treat her so awfully. And sometimes she's in here and they are so mean to her. And they call her half price Camilla in front of everybody. And she's like, I want you to tell her that if she ever needs a place to stay or if she ever needs anybody,
if she needs can come
stay at my house or, I will help her. Which is very sweet of Mrs. Beasley.
It was. And she was like, I really should have said it before. And I never did. And I'm really sad and regretful that I didn't. So please pass that along. If she needs anything, I am at her service.
So sweet.
And it's the sweetest.
So he comes back at 4 p.m. Or later, I don't remember, but at least 4 p.m. And the women at the inn have basically been like, all right, listen. You had done been ruined. We know.
And you're now left.
You're not a governess. What had happened here is you came to this hotel with this guy. You had sex with him. He promised that he would come back for you and not make you ruined, and he's not coming back. So you need to go to London and start being a prostitute, basically.
Yeah.
And the hotel lady is like, you seem like the kind of girl that kind of life would suit her. Yeah. She's just like, oh, I know, I'm so flirty. This sucks.
Honey.
And so she's just sitting there all day listening to them being like, all right,
get ready for your exciting new career.
Right. And they're just like, you can't stay here tonight.
Right. This is a quote unquote respectable establishment.
Right.
So you can stay one more night and then you gotta go.
Yeah, and she doesn't have any money. He gave her the money for the hotel.
Right.
She just has her little suitcase of 2 shitty dresses and shoes that don't have soles.
Yeah.
He does come back.
Yeah, finally. Yeah. And meanwhile, she's been helping in the kitchen all day, knowing that she needs to be useful or else.
Or they're gonna kick her out.
Yeah.
And she has prepared this whole little speech for him. He walks in and he's like, I'm so sorry, the telegram took so long and whatever. And she's like, nope, I'm still going to say my speech. I have been practicing it all day. I had nothing better to do. Which is great. And she talks about how she's been preparing herself for a new exciting career in prostitution all day long.
Yes. Yeah. She's like, don't worry. Everybody made things very clear to me today while you were gone, while you supposedly abandoned me. And she's trying desperately not to well up and tell him that she doesn't like feeling abandoned because she's all too familiar with it.
Right.
And he, meanwhile, is getting the dressing down that he hasn't gotten in years.
Right. And he could have sent her word or something that he was going to be late, and he didn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so he looks at her and he goes, you're a bit of a tigress, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. But this kind of highlights a fundamental misunderstanding that he has for kind of the first half of the book, which he believes, I've got to get out of this marriage because I've been trapped into it. I'm doing her a favor as well by getting her untrapped from this marriage too. But because he's always had some level of privilege his whole life, he took over his family's companies at 15. He doesn't really understand what it's like to be a woman of nothing in this. Not like this marriage is now the only thing she has. Like she will be home. Like she will be a prostitute if this gets annulled. And she's still been kind of like supportive of the annulment because she wants to be nice. And he just does not understand that for a while. Like he thinks he's doing her a favor. Right. And kind of up until about this point where he realizes, oh, okay, like she's being very charitable by like letting me do this annulment thing.
Mm-hmm. So he takes her to Mrs. Beasley because she's like, I can't stay here with people who think I am good for nothing and am going to be a prostitute.
But,
like I can't.
So they decide they're going to stay at Mrs. Beasley's house, but I think first they go see Mrs. Martin.
Oh,
they
cool.
strategize that night.
Yeah.
About like, okay, now what are we going to do? Because he tells her, hey, his uncle isn't going to give them the annulment unless they get dirt on Bishop Lassiter.
And so I love that moment because she's like, yeah, remember the time this morning where I tried to stop you and tell you all the things I know because I have an excellent memory and I know all of the rector's business. Do you remember that? And instead you rode off to fix everything. Oh, do you remember that? And he's like, yeah. Can you tell me now then? I'm ready to listen. She's like, oh, how charitable of you.
So she thinks back into her brain and she remembers this. Mrs. Martin was very upset with the rector about her charitable donation. So she's like, maybe we ought to go see her and see what she was so upset about. Maybe he was abusing her funds in some way or misusing her, stuff. So they wake up in the morning and they get in a carriage to go see Mrs. Martin,
another excellent side character.
So great. Let me call up her scenes here because
so they arrive and he's like, let me do all the talking. I am man with logics and brain, so I should be the one who does the talking. And she's like,
because they want to do like an elaborate lie when they go in there, and he does classic Nigerian prince.
Oh boy.
He walks in and he's got like some kind of African accent, and he's like, I'm a wealthy, prominent person of the Yoruba kingdom, and I am visiting here, and I want to know where to put my money, and I was thinking about giving it to Rector Miles. What do you think about that?
And she was like, oh, so you need somebody to deposit the funds on your behalf, and then blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I just want to do that. And she's like, this is a terrible scheme. You're not going to make any money with this lie. And he's like, I'm not trying to make money. And she's like, well, I still think this is really ill-conceived.
And she looks at Camilla and she's like, listen. Because Camilla has not said a word this whole time. Yeah. She's like, listen, girl, like you are way too pretty and way too smart looking to be falling for whatever this guy's about. I don't know what's going on. But after he ruins you, if you want to come back here, I will help you out. Like sort of thing. Like you should not be in this scheme. And so she just keeps being like, stop lying to us. And then finally Camilla jumps in and tells her the real story. And she still thinks they're lying. Like, she's one of these old ladies with the cane who's just standing there, like, leaning on the cane the whole time, like, get out of my house. And then she, like, sits down and she's like, this is definitely still a lie, but, like, I'm liking this story,
but it's a really entertaining one. Thank you for that, at least.
She says, do go on. It's a new lie, at least. And at my age, you don't often see new things.
Yeah, so she tells her the whole story, and she's like, we need to know if something is amiss. So will you just tell us the story of your charitable donation and what happened?
Right.
And we find out that she's elderly. She got the inheritance from her dead husband, her never loved dead husband. And she has this really horrendous nephew who came to the house and attempted to take a maid by force. And Lady Martin was like, abso-fucking-lutely not. She went to the authorities, turning in her own nephew.
And they were all believed her. England times woke, which is boys will be boys.
Yeah. Boys will be boys, and I hope you give her a good reference and like pay her off a little bit.
Pay her off, England times woke.
Yeah. So she tries to give she tries to take care of this maid because she loved her. She was with the household for a really long time. And the maid was like, you're too good. I'm not going to take all of your money.
Right.
And she takes a little bit and then leaves. And Mrs. Martin then decides that her nephew is getting 0 pennies.
0 things. And she's going to fill up her whole life with the most like lavish shit in her old age.
Well,
to include.
But first she's like, so I'm going to give my money to charitable work.
Some of it
goes to fucking rector. Yeah. Some of it. So it goes to the rector, gives over $2,000, and she tells him that it has to be specifically allocated to help women in this situation.
Yeah.
Women who have nowhere else to go, women who have been compromised in some way and don't have any societal things to fall back on. And he's like, yes, of course. And when she follows up, he tells her that it just went into the general church funds and there's nothing he can do about it.
Because there were no women around in that situation to give it to. And she's like, bullshit. Like, all of England is women who have been ruined.
Yes. Yeah. Like, she actually says, if there are men in the world, there are women who need this. And let's be honest, everybody. Camilla, we find out, was one of those women.
Yeah.
Rector Miles fucking found her,
paid her
kissing
half price
a footman.
Camilla wages.
Yes. Yeah. And was like, I will take you in. I will make you a better person with my Bible thumping bigotry and shaming.
Yeah.
And you're going to accept half wages in return.
Right.
And Camilla took it, and she'd been there for 18 months.
Yeah.
So, but then she was like, and then these guys fucked me over too, because I don't see the church being renovated. I don't see anything good happening with those funds. So like, you know what? I am just going to spend this money on myself. I'm going to find myself a pretty young thing to hang out with.
Yeah. So then she goes into like a little thing about how much she loves pretty young women. And
young things.
Yeah, pretty young things.
Everybody assumes it's men.
But she says something about how she wants a pretty young thing and inquires as to whether or not the two of them could find her one.
Yeah.
And Adrian says, that's honestly not my forte. I think I'd make a better fraudster, and we know how that turned out. I wouldn't know how to obtain men for you. And she's like,
no,
men?
Yeah.
Mrs. Martin rolled her eyes. Men? Did you not just hear my thoughts on men? I buried one man and took his money, and let me just say that the money was the best thing he ever wanted to give me, and it wasn't worth what I had to put up with. I suppose I shouldn't say such things aloud, but I'm so old that no one takes me seriously. I vastly prefer women. Pretty men are nothing but pains all around. I see, Adrian said. And then she turns to Camilla and she's like, so then it gets kind of awkward because like she's called Camilla pretty and she's like, oh, does she want to do sex on Camilla? Right. Is that what's happening? And she goes, I wasn't talking about you. Mrs. Martin tilted her head in Camilla's direction. You, she said, pointing on the other hand. Oh, she says to Adrian, I wasn't talking about you. You, she said, pointing on the other hand, you would do. So Camilla's like, what? She goes, no, not specifically like, you. I want a young thing, but you're what, like 20? She's like, I thought as much. You had that look about you. Like, I wanted a 40-year-old woman, like, you know, a young thing to me. I don't want a child, right. Dear God. And she's like, I don't want a child. I'm not a man.
She's so
Men
good.
want children. And then she said that women will always find each other. You know, women can be terrible too, but here's a bit of wisdom I've acquired over the years. However terrible women are, they're usually better than men. Thank you, Adrian folded his arms in annoyance. You're welcome, Mrs. Martin smiled beautifully. You're entirely welcome, and come back if you ever need to hear it again. She's outstanding. I love her.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
So
they head off in the carriage and they have a really, really good talk where he finally, like, everything actually crystallizes for him that she is going to be left with nothing and with no prospects. And she tells him a little bit about her past and the way that she was, like, shunted from house to house and how
she doesn't tell him about her family so much. She just says she lost her family and that she went from an uncle who didn't want her to a cousin who didn't want her
to a friend of a cousin She tells him about Larissa.
She tells him about Larissa in this moment where one of the houses that she was thrown out of was that she was young. I mean, she's only 20 now, so I can only guess she was 13.
Yeah,
at
13,
this time.
14.
And she started practicing kissing on one of the daughters in the home. And then she said, we were just practicing, and then we weren't practicing. And then they found out, and then they sent away Camilla because she was a bad influence because she was smooching their daughter, which is really sad.
Yeah.
And she said that she had thought that Larissa would swear devotion to her and say, no, I love her, so keep her, because they're 13, so it's true love, of course. But she didn't. She just stayed quiet and was like, yep, she's a bad influence that I've been smooching ladies. It was so sad. And then that she came to then she smooched on a footman somewhere, she said. And then she came to Rector Miles, and Rector Miles was like, all right, I'll pay you half price because that's what you're worth because you won't stop smooching. And the end. So then she falls asleep in the carriage.
Yeah. And he looks over and he sees that everything on her person is frayed and tattered and mended.
And he falls in love a little bit.
He does.
While she's telling on her story. And he's like, you know what? She needs some fancy dresses. So he drives her to go get some fancy dresses, which is very sweet.
And he's like, I hope store-bought is okay.
Oh my God.
And she's like, what? That's incredible. So, and then she comes back with all of her goods, and he's gotten her a meat pasty and a soda water. And she's like, you are just treating me to these delicacies that I can't even handle. He takes her back to Mrs. Beasley, and they strategize more in the sitting room. Mrs. Beasley has apparently gone off to supposedly get tea.
Right.
Because Mrs. Beasley's whole thing is, I'm not a gossip. I don't tell the gossip. I just hear the gossip. That's her. That's the standard that she lives by.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say, when he got her the meat pasty, she says she'd liked him at first glance and liked him even more after they'd spoken, but now he'd fed her.
I know.
And she was like, oh no, I'm hopelessly falling in love. I just thought it was, it goes on and on. She's like, his smile, it did things to her insides and blah, 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 blah. Her heart had been kicked in the chest. He'd been even more handsome than when they'd first met because he gave her a meat pasty.
That's right.
Anyway, okay, so they're with Mrs. Beasley that night strategizing, and they decide that she should go back to the rector's place and talk to the groundskeeper who knows all about all the funds and how they're used and say, hey, I am a woman who has been compromised. Is there anything for me? Is there a program? Is there something? So if they can get the groundskeeper to say, no, there's no programs, and maybe swear that to an affidavit, they will be able to prove that the funds were misused.
And bless her, she's like, he always liked me. He was always nice. He was always kind.
Poor girl.
It'll be fine.
But also that night, when they make up this strategy, he brings her some lemon cakes.
Yeah, lemon tarts. Oh.
So through her internal monologue, she hasn't told him this yet, but her father was executed for treason.
Yeah, an Earl.
Yeah, he was an Earl, so she's actually Lady Camilla. And he was executed for treason. She has brothers and sisters, but after his execution, they had decided they were going to stay together no matter what. But Camilla went to live with an uncle who was like, I will support you, basically.
I'll keep you in dresses and lemon tarts.
Yeah, and she's like, we got to go live with this uncle, guys. And they were like, no, we got to stay together. And her oldest sister, Judith, said, this uncle does not love you. We love you. And if you go live with him, you never deserve love again. If you don't want to love us, we don't want to love you. And she has thought of this as a curse her whole life now, ever since she went to live with that uncle. Love. Yeah. And he just kicked her out because he didn't like her. I mean, that wasn't even a time where she was doing anything wrong, right? She was too chatty for him.
Yeah.
And ever since then, she believes that she does not deserve love because she shunned her family. She wrote her sister tons and tons of letters. Her sister has never written her back. And ever since then, she can't eat a lemon tart.
She tried once,
Yeah.
but it just tasted like ashes in her mouth.
Because it makes her
Because
feel
she
so
knew.
bad because she sold off her family for lemon tarts. And so he's like, well, I think you deserve love. And somebody, I might not be the one who wants you, but somebody will. And then she eats the lemon tart. And it's like...
Yeah, and he's like, maybe you can just try. And so then he watches her. Oh, God. He watches her take a bite of this lemon tart and close her eyes and like savor it and la 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 la. And then she like licks her lips. And then she opens her eyes and she's like, I can taste everything.
Buttery and
Adrian.
lemony. Oh man, now I really want a lemon tart.
It's so good. Tanya makes the best lemon bars.
Really? My mom makes
they're
great
so
lemon
good.
bars. Okay. So she eats lemon tart. Then the next day they go talk to the groundskeeper. So he waits in the carriage. She walks out to the groundskeeper. He can't see her.
It does not go well.
Yeah. She basically asks, and he's basically like, "Scram, get out of here."
Literally lifts a shovel to her.
And then, when she's...
And chases her off.
Yeah, when she won't go, she's asking more questions. And she's rattled to her core by this. Like, it's awful.
Because it shows her how much has changed in the past 72 hours when this really nice, gentle gardener...
Yeah, he
who used
liked
to be
her
really kind
before
to her.
she was slutty.
Yep.
It's awful. Awful, awful, awful. So she goes back to the carriage and she's like, it didn't go great.
Yeah, but she's holding a lot.
Yeah. She doesn't really tell him what happened. And she just starts crying.
Well, because he comes over to her and he's like, wait. We've had this whole conversation and I haven't noticed that you're not okay. What's wrong? And she's like, nothing's wrong. It's okay. It's okay.
And when she's thinking... She's trying to, like, calm herself down. She thinks, trees, she reminded herself. Trees with leaves on them. Leaves rustling in the summer. Green grass. Sunshine. And that is... So, do you remember the Karate Kid with the girl?
No.
You don't remember the lady Karate Kid? What's her face? From $1 Million Baby and Boys Don't Cry. What's her name? Hilary Swank.
Oh,
Hilary Swank.
You
remember the Hilary Swank Karate Kid?
I never saw
Oh my god, and she like jumps on the car.
No.
Man, so the plot, I just talked to my friend Cole about this movie. But it's like Mr. Miyagi has to like train her because like boys are like harassing the school has solicited like boys to harass girls in the hallways. Like it's a really crazy, super weird plot. Like it's super weird. But like she becomes the next Karate Kid.
Yeah.
And the meditation he teaches her is like when she gets super stressed out about stuff that's going on in her life is that she closes her eyes and she says, the sun is warm and the grass is green. The sun is warm and the grass is green.
Aww.
And I have done that since I was like 10 years old watching that movie. And I was like, Camilla does the same thing as the Karate Kid. And me.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's useful, guys.
The sun is warm, the grass is green.
The sun is warm and the grass is green. It's okay. Somewhere the wind is rustling through the fields and the geese are blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
It is.
Okay. So, yeah,
so
she's crying.
Like, I'm not going to make you go back because his whole idea throughout this talk is, okay, you go back, you ask for your job back again, and then you get the records. It's the only way we're going to get the records is if you go back and you ask for your job. And she's like, I want to do anything for you. I cannot. Yeah. After this encounter with the gardener, I cannot.
Right.
And he's like, wow, I've really asked you to do a lot. I have to do some business, right? Anyway.
Right.
So why don't we just go do my business?
Right. Yeah. So they're going to go back to his house or whatever. And because he has this whole thing where he had to like design some plates. He has to oversee the designing of plates. And so he's been writing he hasn't told
this
Grayson
huge project.
Like fuck her shit about what's going on. He's just been like, oh, I'm tied up, Grayson. I'll be back to do those plates soon. And Grayson's like, all right, because like the plates are due. We need the plates. And so he's got to go back and do the plates now. So he's going to take her with him. And I think he says, you don't have to come with me. And she's like, I want to go to where you are.
Well, and also we need to strategize still. What if I think of something?
Right.
I don't want to have to telegram it to you. Also, I just want to be in your presence.
Yeah, I just want to be around you. You smell good.
Mm-hmm.
So then we flash to Camilla's family. Teresa and Benedict, who we already know, I guess, because this is book 2 in the series.
Yeah, but we also know them because she dropped their names a couple of times.
But I think if you'd read book 1, you would be like, Teresa and Benedict, which I was not.
Yes.
I didn't know them.
Yeah, because book 1 is Judith's story,
right.
The eldest sister.
The one that told her that she didn't deserve any love.
Listen, it was the heat of the moment and she was young.
I know that now. But, like, I was reading through it, and I was like, I do not want to read a book about this horrible person. And then I know. She's obsessed with sandwiches, and she's everything that I would expect a Courtney Milan heroine to be. I don't know why I doubted the queen. So we go back, Teresa and Benedict, and they have, like, this great game where Teresa's a general, and Benedict has to salute her. It's great. And they're thinking of what to get Judith for her birthday. And Teresa has been trying to make pillows, because that's what girls do.
Ladies do, yeah.
And can I tell you something?
Yes, please.
She's trying to make all these pillows, and they've looked like splotches and not... She's trying to make a raven, right? She's trying to do a cross-stitch raven, and it just keeps making a splotch. And one of them looked like...
a rotten cauliflower.
One of them looked like a rotten cauliflower. One looked like a diseased octopus. And then the next sentence is, a shame. She liked octopodes. Which, I don't know the spirit of... I don't know Courtney Milan, personally.
Okay. Oh, God. Here we go, guys.
Here we go again.
Here we go.
All right. If you're a Patreon listener, you know that I made a confession. Okay.
She feels a connection.
I just feel like...
a kindred spiritness.
I just feel like if I met Courtney Milan, that we would be friends, because she is a law person like me.
Right. Who loves figure skating.
I tried to tweet at her about law a couple weeks ago, and I don't know why I thought a tweet about, like, when I fucked up in the courtroom would be, like, a good way to make a former Supreme Court clerk, like, be my friend. But she tweeted back, but, like, we're still not friends. So she's a lawyer. She's also, I don't know if she was a former figure skater, but she's very into it if she's not. And I am a former serious figure skater, and I am also very into it. And I feel like we could talk about that, and also romance books, and also having a small snaggletooth dog that you're obsessed with. And then here, do you know about my obsession with the word octopodes?
No.
The plural of octopus?
I thought it was octopi.
That's wrong.
Oh, it's an octopode.
And I feel octopodes. I feel like Courtney might also have, like, a weird obsession with the plural of octopus, and that's why she has inserted this in here. Because the history of that word... Get ready for your next 2-hour podcast. So, octopus, right?
Yeah.
Greek word.
Yes.
Originally, in the English language, they had octopus, and the plural was octopuses, right? Like any other noun that ends in an S, we put an ES after it.
Right.
Then, sometime during England times, I don't know what the time frame, there was a movement to make
obviously pre-Regency.
Sure, I don't
right.
know. There was a movement to make all plurals of words, like, back to the Latin forms.
Oh.
We tried to make English more Latin. So then it was changed from octopuses to octopi. And then, after that, dictionary scholar people were like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we make a Greek word a Latin plural? If it's a Greek word, it must be a Greek plural. So they made it octopodes. I can't think of another plural Greek word, but they end in bodies, you know.
Yeah.
And that is the correct plural form now of octopus, but no one has ever said octopod. No one's ever said, look at that school of octopodes over there. But that is technically...
I mean, it helps that they usually don't hang out together very much.
Yeah, fair.
They're sort of solitary creatures.
And I don't think they would be a school if there were. It was probably like an ink blot of octopodes. I don't know what this plural is. But I am obsessed with this. And then recently, and by recently I mean probably in the last like 30, 20 years or so, they have made octopuses an accepted plural of octopus because that's what
Still
everybody.
Not octopi?
No, octopi is right out.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is like the one word that is like gone through. I don't know if it's the one word, but it is a word that has gone through all of these like crazy changes. And a
renaissance, really?
Yeah. Well, I used to listen to like a podcast about, or no, wait, I think it was a YouTube video series from like Merriam-Webster about like weird words that have gone through like weird transformations. And this was one of them that I've always like hung on to in my head because no one says octopodes and that's the proper way. So here's what I just feel like maybe Courtney saw that same video and has also been obsessed with that word for like maybe the last 10 years. Maybe. And like maybe that's my in. Like maybe that's how we become best friends.
Meanwhile, guys, she said this to me via text one day, and I was like, #replaced.
Not the thing about the octopodes, just the...
No, just like, why isn't Courtney Milan my best friend?
I can never replace you with Courtney Milan, because if I ever met her in person, I don't know what I would do. I think I'd just do creepy fingers at her face. Like, it's just become such a, like... I just know it in my soul that we could be best friends, and that's not a good place to be with a stranger. Not-
You know, I actually had, so this is going to come out after our podcast with Sarah McLean, and I think it was recorded, but Sarah McLean was like, there was this amazing book that I read by this author, and so I just stalked her into being my friend. It's
author?
Possible. Yeah. Sarah McLean was like, I read this amazing book. I was like, I have to know this person in real life. And so she stalked her into being her friend.
Wait, Sarah McLean stalked the author. I thought you meant that since your interview with Sarah McLean, you had stalked this author. I'm like, that was like 5 days ago. Like, how hard did you stalk her? All right. But I just feel like,
I'm not good at that.
I never become friends with people who stalk me. I'm like, laugh. Too much.
Well, I think that's a particular word that is not how it actually happened.
It's that thing of where you'd never be in a club that would accept you as a member. You know what I mean? Like, if anyone was like way too about being my friend, I'd be like, hold up. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's the problem with you? Why do you value me so much? Like...
No, I hear that in my soul. Yeah. Which is why I was so nervous passing you that note in the award ceremony when I was like, do you want to hang out? Yes or no?
That's how Melody and I became friends, you guys. We were kind of work friends, but then at a forensics award ceremony where we were both coaches on the same team, she passed me a note that said, would you like to hang out? Yes or no? And then I drew a heart around yes. Yeah. That's how we became friends. I like that exactly one person I put out on Twitter, what do you want the bonus episodes to be about? And one person was like, forensics. And I was like, oh,
get ready.
You don't want
Buckle up,
this.
bitches.
You don't want this.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Teresa and Benedict are like, all of our efforts suck. Why don't we find Camilla for Judith? Because Judith has been wearing black. Judith has been mourning the loss of her sister. We must find her. Mm-hmm. And so they have a mission, and it's so cute. Benedict is 14, Teresa's 15, and they're fucking adorable. So then, we're back in Hamel, or wherever Adrian's factory is, right?
So they're at the factory, they're living in the cottage at the factory. They do a lot of, like, they go have dinner. He has a very diverse staff. This plate china making factory place hires a lot of people that don't have anywhere else to go and are from all over the place
a lot of times.
Yeah. So there's like a Indian guy that's like the artist, I think, and a lady named Mrs. Song that I assume is of Asian descent.
They're all artists.
Yeah. Oh, are they all artists? Okay. So
all
they have
the
dinner with everybody.
The artists.
Artists. They're talking about what kind of plates to have or whatever. So that's that scene. So basically we've got a few days period where he's working on plates. Yeah. And she's back at the cottage, like, doing nothing.
She's trying to figure out what to do with herself, and she wants to be helpful.
Right. So she makes an affidavit for Mrs. Martin to sign, writes up all the affidavit questions. She looks through all these books and finds other cases that have been before church court about different annulments. And she starts to get, like, very empowered through these stories of other women who have either been wronged by church court and denied their annulments or stood up to, like just all these historical stories of women who have been compromised and not granted their annulments, and how clearly it has been the man's fault and the church has done nothing about it. And have
or they should not have granted the annulment, and they did, right? Because the guy wanted it,
right? Just wronged by the courts in some way, and not taken seriously, and that their testimony was less valuable than a man's.
Yeah, so she's like, when I read it the first time, I didn't understand most of the words. When I read it the third time, I started getting it. When I read it the fifth and sixth time, I started becoming best friends with these centuries-long dead women because we are sisters in being wronged by England time.
And she starts like rehearsing like to trees and stuff outside, like what she would say if she was in that courtroom now, and like the speech she would give. And he's working on the plates, and they've decided that she will be a person to like look at the plates when they're done to see if they're like,
she'll be a test audience.
Good.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I don't have any taste. And they're like, most white women don't. That's why we need you. Like,
it's so good. You're exactly the right audience.
And so then every night he's coming home and hearing about like all the things she's reading, and they're like talking about their days and stuff. And he's
also working on the plates with all these artists. His job, his role, his talent is to take these 10 or a dozen artists who are all sniping at each other and being like, my design is best. No, my design is best. And incorporating different pieces of all of them into one design and like working through the process with them. So he's sort of like the mediator.
Yeah.
And at first they have this idea that it's going to be the story of this bear with like different design elements composed. And then he has a conversation with her, and he goes up the stairs to go to bed, and he's like, oh my God, of course it isn't a bear. Of course it shouldn't be a bear. That's what's been wrong with the plates the whole time. Goes back to the artists and starts creating this dozen plate series about the story of a tiger.
Little tiger chasing its dreams. And he's called her a tiger throughout the book ever since that first time he called her a tigress. And he would be he tells her facts about tigers. He's like, oh, you are a tiger. And she's like, what? Because I did this. And he's like, oh, yes, tigers do that all the time. Like, I know a lot of things about tigers. And when he realizes that is after a specifically like very poignant moment where she pours her heart out to him. I think after she tells him that she's a lady and her dad was executed.
I think so too, yeah.
But I just remember it being a part where she just exposed her whole soul to him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was after they smooched. No, because they smooch after. No, never mind.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But she like...
No, he's just falling in love with her person.
She pours her soul out to him, and then he's like, I have to go. I must work on the plates. And she's like, all right, fuck me then, I guess. I don't know. Like, I just remember being like, at least tell her a nice story or something before you run out of there.
Right.
And then, I mean, he's getting the urge to touch her, and he knows that he can't. I've got a passage.
Oh, we have a patented Courtney Milan masturbation
I literally
scene.
wrote Courtney Milan masturbation scene TM. You know what? If Courtney Milan tried to trademark awesome hand job masturbation scenes, I think I would be okay
I'd be
with
fine
it.
with it.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to copyright when a masturbation scene is this good. I'm gonna sue you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
of course, but like
she would
I'd be
never
comfortable with it.
She's amazing.
She writes the best ones.
God, they're so hot.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, he's in his bed. He thinks about her. Oh, God, I can't read this whole...
He's thinking about all the things she's overcome and the way that she is beautiful and...
It had sunk into his skin. Every moment he'd spent with her, he'd found himself wanting just a little. Every minute in her company, his heart seized with almost painful gladness. Tonight, she had talked about something else she had found in that book of ecclesiastical law, and she had started caring about... He'd found himself leaning forward, smiling, wanting that future happiness for her so much that he gripped the arms of his chair to keep from reaching out and touching her himself. He let out a sigh. Oh, he had a problem. If they weren't semi-legally married, it might be different. He might have moved his hand to touch her tonight. He might have asked if he could kiss her so that he could taste the determination in her voice. If they hadn't been married, he could have explored this slowly, sweetly, but they were something like married, and he didn't want to be, and they had to not consummate this marriage. If they started kissing and touching, it was a bad idea all around.
It's so good.
More importantly, he knew how much Camilla wanted affection. It would be the cruelest thing he could do to give that affection he wanted for her. And when he didn't want anything aside from that momentary affirmation, that footman she mentioned had done just that to her. He used her and then discarded her. He wasn't cruel. He just didn't want to be married to her. Because he has this whole thing where he wants to fall in love like his parents fell in love over, time.
Over a 3-year period.
Yeah,
and so he wants to be partners and equals and allies first, and then, maybe grow into something later.
And his whole thing is this wasn't a choice. And that's her thing, too. She can't bear them just, always wondering if they would have chosen each other.
She can't bear another person being stuck with her. Right. For eternity.
And he knows that he needs to choose his wife. He can't just
and the more he talks about wanting that choice, the more she's like, hold on a second, I deserve that too. Mm-hmm. I deserve to be chosen. I deserve for somebody to see how worthwhile I am, because fucking hell I am. Mm-hmm. It's so good. Okay. So then what's the next major thing? Just do they look at the plates?
No. I'm sorry, I'm reading.
I'm sorry. She's reading the masturbation scene, you guys. Sorry. Point of order, Erin.
Can I read one more?
Oh, yeah, totally.
He liked her and he wanted her. He shut his eyes and let himself imagine a different conclusion to their talk this evening, or any of the evenings they'd spent together. He imagined her eyes sparkling in the lamplight, the fierce determination on her face as she looked across the room and said that she wasn't going to steal love, that she was going to earn it. He imagined that if they weren't semi-goddamn why me legally married, or whatever this was, and he could tell her the truth, you deserve the world at your feet.
Swoon. Swoon, swoon.
Yeah.
So
he jerks it. It's real nice.
It is. It's excellent. It's excellent work.
Good work. Courtney Milan masturbation scene TM.
TM.
I think that the next thing that happens is that also in her building up of confidence, she decides that now she can go back to the rector, and she starts practicing how she's going to go back and get that records log so that he can get his annulment, So,
not just for her, but for all the women who have been wronged in the annulment process.
And this is where you really start to see the shades of the dedication in this book. When she's going back and being like, old court cases, and I've got to do something for these other women in these other court cases that were fucked over like Anita Hill. I'm going to do something about this. So she's going to go back to the rector. We clip back to Teresa and Benedict, who find their marriage record, and they find a Camilla Winters, and they think this might be her. Then the next scene is Adrian shows her the plates, because the plates are done.
Yes.
And it's like this little tiger, and it gets separated from her mother, and she goes down a river, and she's reaching out of the river to get at this star that's a dream, the tiger's dream. And then she goes over a waterfall and climbs up a mountain, and then she gets to the top of the mountain. There's a
swamp.
Yeah, anyway.
There's a whole journey that happens.
It's this tiger that's separated from her family, and she's in such a horrible situation. And then she starts crying, and she's like, these are about me. And he's like, well, they're about all of us. I also lost my family, and also Mr. Singh lost his family, and Mrs. Song came from so-and-so. And I'm like, shut up, Adrian. And she's like,
right. Because she's slowly deflating.
Right. And
she's also I still think they're about me. I think they are, though.
And she's like, but you call me a tiger a lot. And he's like, yeah, they're about you, but they're not just about you. They're about everybody.
Right.
So yeah,
that is
gorgeous.
What art does.
And then I believe it's fair to say it's on.
It's on. Yeah. So they go back and they're sitting in the library.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm ready to go back to the rector. I'm ready to ingratiate myself back in the household. And I'm ready to get let into the house. I'll show you how I'm going to seduce the footman kind of thing so that he'll give me access to the rector's office.
Yeah, she's going to walk in there and be like, oh, half price Camilla. Like, she starts doing this act like, you thought I was this? Like, I'm this. Right. Like,
I've been working undercover for the rector the whole time.
And I just need to get those records now, and I'll be on my way. I'm like, oh, you thought I was a compromised maid? You were wrong. And man, she gets like, up in his face.
And he's all about the confidence. Ooh. She sits on the arm of his chair and like leans over a little bit and gets really close. And then he just closes the distance.
Well, she says,
no, we're not sure.
First, she says, one of my favorite duties, she whispered, used to be starting the morning fires. Our room was cold, coal being too dear to waste on servants who would warm themselves in labor. So I'd dress in the morning, my hands too numb to do buttons, and rush downstairs. There was pride to be had in adding kindling bit by bit, blowing on the banked coals, encouraging them to catch flame in a blast of heat. He could almost taste her words. He could feel the picture she painted, the warmth of the fire. His hand was on her waist. She leaned in a little more so her forehead touched his. I always dawdled as much as I could on the job, letting my hands grow warm. I'd find some excuse. I needed to make sure the fire caught everywhere so that it burned evenly. I wouldn't leave, even if I threatened to break through. Cam, he felt almost hoarse. I have always been susceptible to flame, she told him. Ugh. And then it's on.
It is on.
He wasn't sure if his lips found hers first or hers found his. And then it's, oh man, it's a real good
so then
kiss.
They're making out in the chair. Her hand is going down his chest, his sculpted chest.
She's like grabbing his waistband. There's a lot of that.
A little bit. And then she breaks it off and is like, uh-oh.
Sorry.
Like, that went farther than I anticipated. I thought you were going to come to your senses at any moment. Yeah. And so when it was obvious, and he was like, I definitely wasn't going to. And she's like, when it was obvious, I came to my senses for us.
Well, the first thing she says is, see, it fooled you too.
and yeah, he's like, she tries all the bravado.
Yeah, and then she's like, never mind. I wasn't acting.
And he's like, I wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Because he's nothing if not honest. Oh. Mm-hmm. So then she's like, no, we can't do this because I want somebody to choose me too. It's no longer just about you. I deserve this too.
Right.
So,
and she couldn't bear it if they just stayed in the marriage and she never knew if he would have chosen her. Like, she tells him that. And then they agree that no matter what's going to happen here, they're always going to be friends. And he asks her if it would be so unbearable if he hugged her. And she says, I think we've all been in this situation. She says, yes, it would be very unbearable, but it would also be unbearable if you didn't. And they do a hug.
It might be worse if you didn't. So then they head back to the rectory to avenge everything. So they arrive that morning. He sends a telegram as Bishop Lassiter to the rector to get the rector out of the house.
Right.
What's up?
But before this, we clip back to Teresa and Grayson. They've hired Teresa and Benedict. They've hired a private investigator who's found out that she married a man of African descent. And there's a description in there of Camilla, which is a plump, dark-haired, eager to smile, chatty girl. And they were like, oh, that's her. So guess what? Yeah. She's fucking plump, too. Like,
I was so excited when I read that. I was like, thank Christ.
Yeah. So he hooks him up with Grayson. So they're going to go find Grayson. Anyway, sorry. So I just had to add that. Yeah. They go back to the rector. She goes into the rectory place.
Yeah, because the rector has been... he's gone. He's going to send the telegram back, basically. Yeah. And so he's been drawn away. So she walks in, and Kitty finds her first. And Kitty immediately just bursts into noisy sobs.
Bless her heart.
And she's like, I am so sorry. He paid me. I was in the exact same position you were. I have a daughter who's 3. She needs the money because she's with my sister. Like, I'm sorry I was so cruel to you. It was just so nice to not be known as half-price Kitty anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole thing.
It's that classic, like, the bully turns into the bullier situation. Yes. Or the bullied turns into the bully situation.
Yeah, and so Camilla's like, you know what? Are you willing to make this right? And Kitty agrees. So she lets her into the office. She packs up her stuff. Camilla finds the 2 different records that she needs. And then she and Kitty has all of her worldly possessions in one tiny suitcase. And they show back up to the carriage, and Adrian's like, what the fuck is this lady doing here?
We hate her,
she was
remember?
Part of it.
She planted the key in your dress. And she's like, nah, she's good now. We're good. We lady bonded. We're fine.
Yeah. She's going to provide us with an affidavit. You're going to set her up with some kind of position in your family or factory or something with her daughter, P.S., and it's all going to be great.
And so they look at the records and they find out that although Mrs. Oh, they already got the affidavit from Mrs. Martin, by the way. They got her an affidavit. So she had sworn that she gave them £2,000, but in the records, there's only one.
In the church records, there is nothing.
Oh.
In his personal records,
there's £1,000.
He has an income off of investments line.
Because keep in mind, setting up the rector doesn't fucking matter. They have to get the bishop. The bishop is the one that his uncle wants. So they're like, however crooked the rector is, we don't care. We need to get the bishop. So we find that he's got $1,000. They think he probably split that with the bishop.
Yep.
But they're not going to know unless they get their communications. And guess how they were
Meanwhile, you guys
communicating.
They're sitting in Mrs. Beasley's sitting room.
And Mrs. Beasley is listening hard. And they're like, have you been listening? And she's like, oh, yes.
Yep. So she walks into the room and she's like, I am not a gossip.
I do not.
I cannot tell you
I will not.
What anybody says via telegram.
I cannot,
however.
and I will not.
Yeah. However, I kept that telegram that you sent, and I can neither confirm nor deny that our attic is filled with a metric fuck ton of other telegrams that have been sent over the years. I couldn't possibly
let anybody read them. She can't. No, that's ethically unsound.
She puts her keys down on the table and she's like, oh, look, I've misplaced my keys. Oh, no.
And I have to go back to the office for some such reason. It's so great.
It's so good. So she sets them up. They head to the attic and they spend hours going through all of these telegrams trying to find some damning evidence. And then they find a series of telegrams back and forth. It's like the rector going to the bishop saying the package should arrive soon. And the bishop being like, thank you so much for that package. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And then later on, it's another telegram from the rector being like, previous owner of package, pissed.
Yeah.
And the bishop being like, don't worry, I'm going to come and we'll figure it out.
And that's when he came. And that's when he came. Even better. They find out that they had applied for the special marriage license before they caught them in the room together. So clearly they were setting them up. So they've got all the information about Bishop
all of it.
Lassiter. So they decide they're going to go back to Adrian's uncle with all the information. And Adrian's uncle is going to be like, oh, thank you, Adrian, so much. I now recognize you as my true nephew and here have an annulment.
Yes.
I don't know why. Man, Adrian is just as hopeful and optimistic as Camilla. I don't know why he thinks.
Earlier.
Yeah. So,
dummy?
Me, the dummy?
No, him, the dummy.
So they go back to Adrian's house where Grayson is. That house.
Yeah.
He leaves her with Grayson. And
he leaves and Grayson shows up.
Sure. Yeah. She's at his house. He goes to Uncle's house. So he goes and talks to his uncle. His uncle is like, very nice.
He's like, this is even better than I thought it was going to be.
See, I told you could do it, even though you said that you were married at gunpoint and the task was impossible and you needed my help. See, you didn't need my help. I was right. Which is
just the worst. Just a pompous ass hattery.
She had this line in there of like, the worst way of saying I won't help you is saying I believe in you.
I believe in you
on your own. That's so awful. That's what he did. And now he's like, I was right. And Adrian's like, okay, now I'll need that recognition and annulment. And he's like, ooh, yeah, if you would have...
That was before you got caught.
Yeah, he's like, if you would have asked for that annulment, like, right away, we probably could have done it. But now it's been weeks, and there's no way that you haven't done sex to this girl. And he's like, I asked for it right away. I sent you a telegram, and you told me to wait. I waited as per your instructions. And he's like, yeah, but now that I see that you got caught, and, like, they know who you are, and then it'll look like I asked you to pose as a valet to go into his house. And he's like, you did ask me to pose as a valet. It doesn't look like that. That's a thing that you did.
That's literally what happened.
And he's just like, yeah, and I definitely can't recognize you as my nephew now because they know that you went into this guy's house and like lied for me
and how ungentlemanly of me to
Ooh.
set up another man. And so he's like, wait, there was you didn't think about an eventuality where I was caught and you couldn't give me the thing you told me you would give me in return? And he's like,
no,
I didn't actually think that
about
through.
it. That's not something I considered.
Not at all, because I'm so supremely selfish.
Yeah.
I'm not able to game things out like that.
And that is the thing where he's just finally like, oh, okay, I got it now. Like,
yeah,
finally
it's so
this
hopeless.
blows up his hope.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back at the house.
And he's such a good person. Sorry. He's such a good person that he's just like, well,
guess
keep
that's
all
done.
the evidence, I guess.
Yeah.
Good job. I did something nice for you again. And just leaves. I would have been like, give me back all that shit. It doesn't belong to you anymore.
This is why, I mean, Adrian's fine. Because listen, I'm not going to kick Adrian out of bed.
Fine.
Yeah, he's fine. But this is why Adrian's fine, but like Grayson is bae. Because like, Grayson would not suffer that fool.
No. Not a single second.
Speaking of.
P.S. Meanwhile, back at the house.
Back at the house, Grayson comes home and finds Camilla and is like, oh, so you're the one who married my brother at gunpoint, I guess, that he didn't tell me about, you know.
Yeah.
But also, he has a
letter from Teresa and Benedict. It is the cutest letter in the history of fucking letterdom.
Yeah. They're basically like,
so cute.
We've been trying to find you. Judith has missed you. We want you to come back. They keep stealing the letter from each other and like taking over, like, this is Benedict now. This is Teresa now, sort of thing. It's
Teresa here.
Yeah.
I am not a tyrant.
Very adorable.
It's so cute.
And then she starts crying reading the letter because she knows that her family's wanted her all along, and that's very sweet and great. But then the line comes, oh, did you highlight this for me?
Yeah.
Oh, God, Captain Grayson said. You're crying. He said it in the way another man may have said, oh, God, I'm being eaten by wolves. And my note said, oh, hello. Oh, hello, Captain Grayson, military hero and sociopath. What's up with you? And let's see here.
Erin Catnip.
It's definitely Erin Catnip. He says, well then, don't get tears on the family carpets. They could stain. And I would have to throw you out to defend the family honor. She looked at him. There was not so much as a single telltale flicker of amusement on his face to suggest he was joking. If he were Adrian, he'd have been smiling in that remark. Camilla blew her nose messily on the handkerchief he'd given her and then looked up. Oh dear, I hope this wasn't a family handkerchief. Yes. His voice was dry. It was. Non-hunters who use it perish. And I said, be still my heart.
Well, because basically by the end of that conversation, he's like, P.S., welcome to the family.
Yeah.
It's so cute.
She says, I'm beginning to think you're a terrible person, Captain Grayson. and I said, yes, he is. Fan's self. That was my note. Why couldn't she have... But she would not have worked with... I was like, why couldn't she have fell in love with this Grayson fella? But then that would not have worked out at all. She would have stayed the horrible shell of a person she was when we met her. Okay. So then Adrian... Oh, God. I can't even with this.
Oh, God, you guys.
I can't. So...
Okay, I'll take over. So Adrian comes back. She's waiting in the sitting room. And their whole thing up until this point was like...
I felt like I was going to vomit. I couldn't.
I know. In the past couple of days, they've been like, what if we did choose each other? And like, that's a possibility that could happen. And if we could get an annulment, or if we at least knew the annulment was a possibility,
then we would know.
Then we could figure out whether or not we wanted to stay married.
The last conversation they had, they said something about how they could strategize about their ruination. Like they could ruin each other. And how wonderful would that be?
Yeah. And this is like after a near kiss and the whole thing. So she's waiting in her bedchamber. He comes to the door. And the only thing he says is, will you be mine forever? And she is just overjoyed because she assumes he's gone to his uncle. His uncle has said the annulment is possible. I can make it happen. And he's immediately turned around and has chosen her.
Oh my God.
So they have some hot consummation sexy times. And it was a totally beautiful sex scene, but it was tinged by this, like, it's all gonna fall apart moment.
And then afterwards, he tells her that he couldn't get the annulment. And she's
she says, when can I meet your family? When can I meet your uncle? And he's like, oh, he's no relation of mine. He won't recognize me and he won't help. And finds out that he's not going to help them get an annulment. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much impossible as far as his ecclesiastical experience tells him. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh God. Mm-hmm. Like, she just sinks into herself and is like, you didn't choose me. So then he says, like, the worst combination of words with the sweetest intentions ever. Because he's like, no, honestly, I didn't choose you. But I am going to do everything in my power to make this marriage work. And she's like, oh, this is everything I've decided I'm better than over the past few years. This is everything that you've instilled in me that I can dream for more. I'm getting all of it. And so she tries to pretend. I know. She tries to pretend all through dinner. She's laughing at the appropriate moment. She's making banter, blah, blah, blah. And then she says that he takes her up to bed and she's like, I would have given him anything, but he just wanted to hold me and fall asleep. She can't sleep.
No. This is one of those romance novel things where, like, the hero does something colossally stupid.
Yeah.
I wished that Courtney would have given us his... But he says, later that he was walking around town really upset about the uncle and, like, when he made this decision to go back and sex her up. If I could have had some of his monologue during that time, I think it would have helped me.
Yeah, because it made sense afterwards. Or if he had just said that out loud to her.
God, you're such a fucking monster. Like, I can't right now. Like, you knew it. You knew that she was... You knew this about her already. Like, I was so mad at him, and I just wish I could... I couldn't forgive him in that moment. I couldn't.
I know, because he had hours to think things through. It's one of those things where you fight with someone in your brain, and then when you have a conversation with them, you're on two separate pages. Right. Because you've gone through the whole conversation and you've never actually had it out loud. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of that in not reverse, but, you know, in a better trajectory. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, this is horrible. This is awful. I can't believe this is happening to me. But honestly, I really like this girl. Mm-hmm. I love her. I think she's wonderful. She's the only ray of sunshine in this whole desperately awful situation. Right. She's the only person who could make this bearable.
Right.
So, like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it work. Let's, like, in the best way, let's be married. But what he says to her is, I didn't choose you and I'll make it work.
Just, like, I just. So she gets up in the middle of the night.
Bucket of ice water.
She writes him a note that reads as follows. My dear Adrian, she wrote, I refuse to accept the outcome that we have been given. I refuse to accept that we have no choice. I am going to get our choice back by the means available to us. You can find me at my sister's if you wish. Your brother will have the direction. Your friendship has been the greatest gift that I could have known. I hope that even after we are separated, we are able to continue our acquaintance. Oh. If I had been given the chance to choose your friendship from the start, I would choose you again and again and again. I would choose everything about you except the one thing I have been given, which is you who did not choose me. Oh. Yours most truly, Cam. So then she runs out of the house and she realizes she forgot her shoes, and she thinks maybe that on some level she intentionally forgot her shoes so that she would have to go back in and then not leave. So she decides to walk to fucking London or whatever without shoes on. I had a very huge problem with this irrational decision to not just get the fucking shoes and leave again, but whatever, made it more drama. So she's walking all the way to her sister's house, and she gets there like Jennifer the banana cake queen, just full of rocks in her feet, ready to get nursed up by those sisters.
Bruised and bloody. The butler tries to throw her out because she looks like a street urchin. Yeah. And she's like, no, I'm her. And then Judith comes out and she's like, Camilla. And they have this beautiful reunion.
They talk about sandwiches.
Yeah, she soaps herself in all of the different scents.
Yeah. Yeah, she puts hand cream on her feet. Let's see.
It's a whole thing. And then she's like, I need an annulment.
She's like, she gets some dresses. She gets back to being Lady Camilla. She meets with some solicitors, which is how they say lawyers in fancy talk. And then Adrian shows up. And she's like, I knew he would.
So she gets there at 10 in the morning. He arrives at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah. And he's pissed.
Oh, he's so mad.
He's like, oh, you sat through fucking dinner. Like, he's gone through his little inner monologue of all the shit he's going to say to her. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, we had good sex. And then you sat through dinner and you laughed at my jokes and you fell asleep in my arms. Then you want to get up in the middle of the fucking night and write me a note and leave. And I don't know where you are. And like a note that maybe I didn't find for several fucking hours. Like, cause I didn't know where you were. And she was like, you didn't choose me and you didn't tell me. And he's like, I'm right. And she's like, no, I'm right. And then they're fine and they hug.
And then they hug.
And then they kiss. Yeah, I think they do a smooch.
A good kiss.
And then they meet with the solicitors and they get their annulment. And
yeah, several weeks. It takes several weeks of them not seeing each other. He's finishing up his plates.
Yeah.
She's like, after I get the annulment, can I come to your exhibition?
Mm-hmm.
And blah, blah, blah. They get the annulment and then they spend a couple of days just not
talking.
Really. Oh, no. He gets word and he immediately sends her a letter that's like, I would like to see you.
And she's like, I'm doing a lot of traveling lately. And I don't know that I'll be able to see you until this other day. And I will have to meet with you on a train because I've been doing so much traveling. Right. And he's like, yeah, just tell me.
So why don't you meet me in Somerset?
This great thing where she's like, I'll have to speak with you on a train because I'm so busy. And he's like, where and when?
Yeah, I'll come to you.
Loves her so much.
Loves her.
And
because he's ready to make his choice, y'all.
You know he's going to propose because he's on the train. And he's about to, they're talking about how much they like each other. And they're in the train car.
And she mentions the slow falling in love again. How both of them want a slow falling in love.
Funny you should mention that. And he's getting into that pocket. And he's getting down on that knee.
And then, well, no.
What?
Yeah, then a guy comes in
and he's like, fuck. And he's like, undoes the, hand in the pocket and stuff. And she's wearing like a devastating purple dress. So great. It fits her.
And then she mentions the slow falling in love again. And he's like, how precisely slow do you mean? And she looks at him and she goes, well, at least until we reach our destination. And then the rest is negotiable.
So they get out. So she tells him she's gone back and she's visited everybody. She's visited fucking her first uncle, her cousin that hated her Larissa, her smooching friend, who's now a full-blown lesbian living with a lady, and she's got a house, and she's good. They're companions. She has a particular friend.
Thank you so much for being my friend, because that's what led me to know that this is the life I want.
Yeah. So she's got her particular friend, and they're off in the place. And who else did she visit? She visited everybody except for the guy who
and he's like, did you visit the footman? And she's like, God, no.
Didn't visit him. So then they get off in their carriage, and they're in a beautiful field of wildflowers or whatever. And she's
like, we've arrived.
Where have we arrived? Who are you visiting today? And she's like, oh, I'm visiting you. Ooh. And he's like, pulls out a ring that's like an enamel tiger with like jeweled eyeballs and goldy flecks and stuff. And he's like, I choose you. And she's like, I choose you. And then it's smooching time. And it's the end.
And then it's happily ever fucking after time, guys.
After. And the epilogue setting up Teresa's book.
Yeah. Teresa, the fucking badass.
Yeah, she's great.
I think we're going to get more Grayson in Benedict's book.
God.
Because Benedict
I fucking hope so. Because, like, I swear to God, that line about, like, oh my God, you're crying, and he said it in the way that a man would have said, oh my God, I'm being eaten by wolves. Oh, it's so good.
Well, and they mention Adrian's great uncles, who are a couple.
Oh, yeah.
And they started the plate business. Yeah. Henry and John?
Yeah, because she says something about Larissa, and she's like, I hope that's, like, not, like, super offensive to you that I'm telling you about my BFF Larissa, who's, like, gay now. And he's like, no, sometime I'll tell you about my uncles, Henry and whoever, who started Plate Inc. Plate Time.
Yeah, and I guess they have their own novella.
Oh, right. They already do?
Yeah, she did a man novella. Yeah, male, I guess it is.
Courtney. Okay.
Yeah, right?
Man.
So that's really fucking exciting.
Can I tell you, I'd have been much more excited to read this book had Adrian been on the cover of it. I just want to put that out there in the world.
Yeah.
Because I was really dreading reading this book. I was like, oh, we got to read another Regency again because it's really not my thing. And then I opened it up, and page 2, I was like, this is good. If I had had like an Adrian and like a marriage at gunpoint, if I had had any of the elements of the book on the cover of the book, I would have been like, damn.
You wouldn't have fought me. I know.
Yeah. I would have been like, woof.
Well, I mean, I will say that one of the hallmarks of Courtney Milan's books is that it's usually just the heroine on the cover.
I know. Mm-hmm.
But I feel like she kind of buried the lead in this case. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed this nonsense.
I did too.
I just like all the stars I can give it. I'm going to give it. And yeah. So my lady love is commit to yourself again if you can or if you need to. I'm having a hard time with that at the moment because I'm not feeling great, and I'm not doing the self-care things that I normally do, or like I would if I was feeling good in a weird antithetical way, you know. I'm not doing any of the self-care things that I should be, and I've the past 2 weeks I've sort of been indulging my baser instincts and needs and all that kind of stuff, and it's not great. So I guess commit to yourself again with me if you need to, because I need to. And yeah.
You know what I'll say? I'll say the sun is warm and the grass is green. And just know it and say it over and over, and it should calm you down if you need to. Mr. Miyagi told us, and so did Courtney Milan. And there are no two greater authorities on meditation and self-love.
That's right.
And literal self-love, TM.
And also,
than Mr. Miyagi and Courtney Milan. I don't know what Mr. Miyagi does in his private time. I shouldn't.
Mr. Miyagi is a person of all facets.
Sure.
So, yeah.
All right. You can find us on...
Oh, yeah.
It's so daunting every fucking time. Instagram, Heaving Bosoms. Twitter, @heaving_bosoms. Gmail, heavingbosoms@gmail.com. Send us emails. We'll respond. Facebook, Heaving Bosoms Podcast. Heaving Bosoms Geriatric Friendship Cult on Facebook is our friendship cult.
If
you
group.
want to join closed group, you can share all your most privatist, personalist things, and no one will ever know. Is that it?
I think that's it.
If you have joined the Patreon, and you have joined the Patreon at a level that we are supposed to send you stuff in the mail, we need your
Send
mail.
us your address.
We can't do it without that. I think we have like 2, and we're going to start mailing stuff out soon. So
yeah, we have 2 or 3, but please, you can email it, you can DM it, you can whatever it.
Yes.
Just get it to us. Yeah. So keep being a badass and love yourself as much as Courtney Milan teaches us to.
Good word.
All right. I love you tonses. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Bye.
Hey, you. Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list, though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.